Have you ever noticed how the farther away an object is, the blurrier it becomes? It's a natural phenomena known as depth of field. Happens each and every day in the real world, but it doesn't typically occur when working in a 3D software program on the computer. You see, when you build a scene in 3D, no matter how far away something is from the camera, it will always appear to be in focus. And that occurs because the computer and your CG camera calculates everything in its path mathematically, which in turn causes everything in your scene to appear sharp and in focus, irrespective of how far away it might be from the camera. Fortunately, 3ds Max offers an option that you can use in order to create that needed depth of field effect. This video will show you how it's done. Now, before we get down to business here, it's important that you don't underestimate just how essential that in-focus and out-of-focus thing is. Studies have shown that depth of field can be strategically used to draw viewers' attention to certain areas within a scene. Scientific research has actually proven that people have a tendency to focus on areas of clarity, and not on areas that are somewhat fuzzy or blurred out. In fact, a viewer's eye has a tendency to aimlessly wander around a scene if not given a specific area or object to focus on. And that wandering, unfortunately, usually translates to mean they've more than likely missed something within the shot, which is never a good thing. So the proper use of depth of field can actually steer an audience's attention to where you want them to look. We'll see if we can't set that up using a file named depth of field. You can find it in the working files folder. Now, so you know, I've frozen everything in the scene other than the target on the camera. That'll just make it a little easier when we go to select that target. If you're at all unclear on what I mean by freezing, you can check out the video on hiding and freezing objects a little earlier in this title. Okay, let's render the camera view and see what we're working with. We'll do that by hitting the teapot on the far right side of the toolbar, or you could just as easily use the keyboard shortcut, the combination Shift and Q. As you can see, everything is currently in razor-sharp focus, irrespective of the distance it might be away from the camera. We'll change that by activating the camera's depth of field. Let's go ahead and close the render. We can now select the camera. Even though it's been previously frozen, we can do that a couple of different ways. We could choose to use the Select by Name command, typing H on our keyboard to open the dialog. Or, as I'll do, back in the camera view, go under the name Camera and choose Select Camera. In the Modify column, we'll drop down to a section called Multipass Effect. Once there, we'll simply click on the Enable button, leaving the setting set to depth of field. Okay, let's go ahead and render again. This time when we render, 3ds Max is generating little partial or mini renders called passes. Each pass then being added together to create one image that builds in the depth of field effect. As you can see in the picture, the back of the scene is now dramatically out of focus. Max used 12 different render passes to generate the outcome. Probably a few more than we actually need, so let's see if we can't lower that number and still get a realistic result. To do that, over in the Modify column, we'll go a little farther down to the Sampling category in the depth of field parameters. Under Total Passes, we'll change the number from 12 to 8. Let's render again and see how things look. So even with a few less passes, we still end up with pretty much the same result. Plus, we saved ourselves a little on the render time. Now, there must be some kind of way to control just exactly what part of the scene renders as blurry. I mean, maybe we instead want to have the front area of our scene blurrier than the back, reversing the effect. What's blurry and what's not is actually controlled by the camera's target position in the scene. The target location determining the area of the scene that's in most focus. You can see that in the depth of field parameters under Focal Depth. Use Target Distance is on by default. If we wanted the back of the scene in focus, where the text is, we'd simply want to move the target of the camera back to the text. Let's do that in the left-hand view. We'll window select the target on the camera, sliding it farther to the left. Let's again render the camera view and we'll see how things have changed. Take a look at that. Now the front of the scene is blurry while the logo in the back is in focus. So what's in and what's out of focus is determined by the location of your camera's target. Now, you might have possibly seen maybe a movie or TV show where it appears that the area in focus is actually changing over the course of the shot, having maybe the front of the scene in focus in the beginning, then changing that area of focus to the back of the scene over a period of time. That animated blurring effect is typically referred to as pulling focus, and can be accomplished in Max by simply keyframing the position of the camera's target over time. You might like to experiment with that. It's kind of cool how it works. So that's the depth of field. Remember why it's important, and be sure to use it in your own work.